Welcome to Historical Insights. Before we dive in, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. The global presence of a former empire. Examining Britain on a contemporary map might suggest that its boundaries are restricted to the British Isles. However, a global perspective reveals that the British government continues to exert authority over 14 overseas territories. These territories, extending from Gibraltar at the Mediterranean's gateway to the Falkland Islands in the South Atlantic, are vestiges of the once formidable British Empire. At its zenith, just over a century ago, the British Empire encompassed a quarter of the world's land area and governed nearly one-third of the global population. It was renowned as the empire on which the sun never sets. How did this diminutive island nation establish the largest and most influential empire in history? This is the narrative of the British Empire. The foundations of the British Empire. The origins of the British Empire began long before the modern state of Britain emerged. England, the dominant power in the British Isles for much of history, expanded its rule over smaller, independent kingdoms in Wales and parts of Ireland. In contrast, Scotland remained fiercely independent, successfully resisting frequent invasions from England. Colonial commissions and early settlements. By the early 17th century, Queen Elizabeth I had issued several commissions to explorers like Sir Francis Drake and Sir Martin Frobisher to claim new territories on behalf of England. Despite their efforts, these claims were not immediately followed by settlements. The first English colony, established on Roanoke Island in 1585, famously failed, with its colonists mysteriously vanishing without a trace. And the Union of Crowns. Elizabeth I granted royal charters to joint stock companies such as the Levant Company in 1592 and the East India Company in 1600, giving them monopolies on English trade in designated regions. Upon her death in 1603, James VI of Scotland ascended the English throne as James I, uniting the crowns of Scotland and England while maintaining separate governance for both kingdoms. Colonial models and expansion. James I expanded overseas efforts under three models: crown colonies, charter colonies, and proprietary colonies. Over time, as colonies became difficult to manage, many proprietary colonies were transitioned into crown colonies. Plantation of Ulster, a template for new colonies. One significant development was the Plantation of Ulster, where Scottish and English Protestant settlers moved to Northern Ireland. This organized colonization model would later serve as a template for England's New World settlements. Expansion into the Caribbean, Africa, and North America. During the 1600s, England expanded into North America and the Caribbean. It seized territories from rivals, including New York from the Dutch in 1665. In Africa and the East Indies, the Royal African Company, founded in 1660, played a key role in the brutal transatlantic slave trade. Scotland's failed colonization attempt, the Darien Scheme. Meanwhile, Scotland's colonization efforts failed repeatedly. The most disastrous was the Darien Scheme in 1698, an attempt to establish a colony on the Isthmus of Panama. The scheme's collapse led to financial crisis and increased support for union with England. The Acts of Union and the empire's expansion. In 1707, the Acts of Union formally created the Kingdom of Great Britain. Britain expanded through wars with European rivals, gaining new territories after the War of the Spanish Succession in 1714. The British East India Company also increased its influence in India, becoming a dominant power. The loss of the American colonies. The 18th century saw British expansion in North America and the Caribbean. However, tensions with the 13 American colonies grew over taxation without representation. After declaring independence in 1776 and a lengthy war, the United States emerged as an independent nation, marking a turning point for British colonial policy. Exploration and expansion into the Pacific and Asia. Explorers like Captain James Cook charted the Pacific, claiming Australia and New Zealand for Britain. Australia became a penal colony starting in 1788. Britain also expanded further into Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, acquiring key territories like Singapore and Hong Kong. British control in India and Africa. The British East India Company governed much of India until the Sepoy Rebellion of 1857 prompted the British government to take direct control. In Africa, conflicts with the Boers culminated in the Second Anglo-Boer War, leading to British dominance in South Africa. The empire at its peak and growing pressures for independence. As the 20th century began, Britain's empire was at its height. However, independence movements gained momentum, resulting in self-governance for Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Ireland's fight for independence led to the creation of the Irish Free State in 1921. World Wars and the collapse of the empire. The two world wars weakened Britain's imperial power. After World War II, economic hardship and nationalist movements hastened decolonization. Many former colonies in Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean gained independence, though some remained in the Commonwealth and retained the British monarch as head of state. The end of the empire and its legacy. The symbolic end of the British Empire came in 1997 with the handover of Hong Kong to China. Despite the empire's dissolution, its legacy endures in the global use of the English language and cultural practices spread by colonial rule. Modern Britain reflects this diversity, home to people from every corner of the former empire. A big thanks to you. Be sure to subscribe and share our channel for incredible history.